Hello and welcome to PM Express. My name is Nanan Sakwa. Today we are looking at the single spine salary structure and if it's sustainable. There's two schools of thoughts. One is saying that no, it's not sustainable, let's scrap it. The other is saying that no, it's a good idea, let us continue. But the truth of the matter is, are there enough of us paying enough into the national kitty to support this wage bill, which apparently is between 60 to 70%, or basically whatever we make as a country just goes into salary? Just narrow it down to your company, and that every single 100 cedis that you earn for your company, you need 70% of it to pay for just your salaries. You have your electricity bills to come, you have your painting, renovation, and everything else to come. Where then do we get it from? But then the truth of the matter is, if indeed government is employing about 500,000 people, there are about 25 million of us. GRA is telling us that just 1.5 million of us are paying tax. And out of those taxes, we use it to pay for the wages of 500,000 people. What are the other 24 million people doing? Where are they going to get their hospitals from? Where are they going to get their roads and schools and teachers and doctors from? And indeed, if we are continuing down this road, how far down do we go before it crashes? Now, with me in the studio to educate us, we're not even going to discuss this because I need some education on it. I'm sure you also do. There's so much confusion on it. I've got some understanding, thanks to Dr. Bob Watting, who came on this show a few days ago, a few weeks ago, with his diagram and sort of broke it down a bit for us. So I got a bit of understanding, but we need further understanding as to which is the way forward. To my extreme left is Dr. Bob Watting, who's an economist and a labor expert. Doctor, you're welcome.
Thank you.
And then to my immediate left is the man himself, Mr. George Smith Graham. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. There hasn't been a wage issue or story that his name hasn't been mentioned. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Very good. And then joining us on the phone later will be Kofi Asamoah, who is the General Secretary for the TUC. Obviously, if you're taking wages, he handles all these guys, and so he will definitely have a word to put in there. But I'll start with you, George. Is it sustainable? It's a good idea, but can the state sustain it? As with the structures that we have, we don't have a national identity system. Coconut sellers make enough money but don't pay taxes. Sugarcane sellers make enough money but don't put anything in the kitty. Can we collect enough money to pay people and still have maybe 60-70% left to make roads, schools, hospitals, and all these other amenities which the state needs?
Well, thank you very much. Let me say that whether the policy is sustainable or not depends on several factors. Mm-hmm. One fundamental thing that we are all grossing over is that the single spine as an objective. One of the critical objectives of the policy was for government to have control over its wage bill. Mm. How is government going to have control over its wage bill when government does not know how much it pays as wages? That is what the situation has been in the past. Several of these things that have now come to the fore were things that were being paid using certain allowances that came under item 2, that is administration. Some of them were being paid using internally generated funds. All these things have now been brought together on the payroll. And so government is beginning to know exactly how much the country pays in terms of its wages. Having done that, certain decisions as to whether to be sustainable or not will be dependent on what strategic decisions we take from now onwards to be able to ensure that we sustain the policy. And for me, that is the crux of the matter. And we need to look at what other strategic decisions that we can take as a nation to be able to sustain the policy.
I mean, apart from widening the tax next so that we can put more money in the kitty, that's number one, or reducing how much money we pay people, what are other decisions that we can take? Because those are the two realities, either more money or pay cut.
We do a lot of comparison, even using the sub-region and other things. Now, Ghana, I must say, within the sub-region has one of the largest public sector workforce. If we take like Cote d'Ivoire, if I'm not mistaken, as at the last check I did, Cote d'Ivoire had a public sector workforce of about 200 and something thousand. But the population is just about 20 million, about 5 million short of Ghana. But they have 230,000 public sector employees. We have almost about 600,000 public sector employees that we are paying in the country. And so these are issues that we need to look at. Apart from that, we have done what we call a job evaluation that has evaluated a job. We didn't evaluate the individual who is occupying the job. We evaluated the job. So you've given the job a certain value, but that job is being occupied by...
Let me go for a quick break and then we'll come straight back. So stay tuned. We'll go for a quick break and we're coming straight back. Okay, so welcome back. We're looking at the single spine salary structure. As a nation, the system that we have created for ourselves, can we sustain this hefty bill month in, month out? And I think Mr. Graham was in the middle of explaining about the decisions that we have to take to make this sustainable. We agree that you've made us clear that Ivory Coast has got a similar size population, but almost half a government workforce. We have doubled that, and then you were going on.
Yeah. So what I was saying is that one other thing is that you take a look at the evaluation that was done. We've evaluated a job, and therefore evaluating the job, you're giving the job a certain value. But individuals are occupying that job. You didn't evaluate the individuals who are occupying the job. It's a job that you evaluated. After that, a critical look will have to be taken at those individuals who are occupying those jobs. Are they individuals who are qualified enough to take the money that the job evaluation gave you? That is one other thing. One other thing is that let's look...
As to whether the individual fits the job.
Fits in the job. It's another thing. Because if the individual does not fit the job, you will not get the required level of efficiency and productivity you are looking for.
Okay.
And therefore, it can also affect your productivity and efficiency within the public service. The other thing is that the institutions that we have on the payroll, should all of them be on the government subvention? Is it possible for us to identify institutions within the public service who can be on their own and should not necessarily be subsisting on government subvention? It can also be looked at, institutions. And we also need to look at some of the allowances that we are paying at the moment, that probably we are paying on the payroll. Is it possible for us to take some of these allowances of the main payroll and pay them using administrative votes or whatever? There are several critical issues that needs to be looked at, and I'm sure when we look at all that and we ensure that the individuals who are occupying these jobs are qualified enough to do the job, they are efficient to do the job and everything, efficiency will go up, productivity in the public service will go up, and it should be possible for us to sustain the policy.
Just a quick one before I bring Dr. in. If we take, let's say we identify 6 institutions that can look after themselves. Let's say road tolls, let's say Kolebu has a private sector, so you can go in as a private patient, and this. Won't these institutions also let the national kitty drop down, and therefore letting the problem still be the same? Because now they are bringing their money into the kitty and then they come and take their pay.
So surprisingly, not all of them are bringing the internal generated funds to government.
But then they come to take away.
Most of them are retaining 100% of their internal generated funds. But government pays their workers. Government they still subsist on government subvention. So at the end of the way, if you do a critical analysis of some of these institutions, and we can take them off government subvention, wean them off government subvention. Again,
if they retain, as a government institution, if they retain that money, I mean, retain it for what? I mean, they need to bring it to the, national kitty.
These are all issues that I'm sure the forum will take a critical look at.
I'll bring Dr. in now. Doctor, my argument is that not enough of us are paying taxes. 500,000 people are under the government watch who have to collect their pay every month. And they are drawing 60, 70% of whatever we put in the pot, they will take it. So there's 40, 35% left. Out of that money, we need to build roads, hospitals. We need to pay, find more schools, get schools under trees. Everything has to come from that 40, 35% that is left. How long do we sustain it?
Well, thank you. I think the discussion all along have been simplified in my own opinion. I think we box everything together and say wage bill. And as a student of economics, sometimes you need to go behind the absolute figures and break it down and see where the problem is coming from. I think we've talked about 60% revenue going into wages and salaries. But as I always say, that first thing we have to look at is as to whether that 60% indeed go to people who are working. Don't we have any leakages anywhere? It's something that we have to look at. Apart from that, I think, I don't want to use the word demonizing, but I think when we have a problem, we don't sit down and look at where the problem is coming from. So we box everything together and say it's a problem. And if we try to move with our emotions, we'll always have a problem. Single spine came in to solve a problem. And we all knew that the old system was not the best, because you can't pay workers when the amount of money you are paying them is not based on any scientific analysis. It's based on
guesswork,
not guesswork, but negotiations depending on the strength of the union or of the employer, and so on and so forth. So you have a lot of disparities here and there. So single spine came in to solve it. Now we are saying that because of single spine, we have wage bill going up. But I don't think the wage bill can be attributed to only people who are on the single spine. That is the first thing we need to look at. The second thing is that we are only referring to 2012, from 2.5 billion to 7 billion. Can we sit down and say that, well, did we pay the arrears that we were supposed to pay in 2011, and therefore it came in 2012, and that is why we have had the figure so up, and therefore in 2013, if all arrears had been paid in 2012, we may not have the same problem. So we need to diagnose the problem before we can say that the single spine is the problem. You take the budget, and the only thing you see are the absolute figures. But behind the figures, there are certain things that we need to understand. When we say wage bill of the government, we have all those people who are not single spine as part of it. We have Article 71, people who also draw on that, and they will be part of that wage bill. And a lot of activity that will fit under the wage bill. So when you take the figure and you say it is 60%, I think then you are, as it were, demonizing the single spine without looking at where the problem is coming from. So Mr. Graham has talked about productivity and so on and so forth. I mean, that is fair enough, but I think we have to look at the figures very well and identify where the problem is coming from before we can say that the single spine has created all these problems.
Mr. Graham, I'll come to you. I mean, we have a culture in the country where it is politicians who speak to us. Sometimes I even wonder if ministries have PROs, and if they do, what exactly do they do? Because if anything happens within any ministry, it's the minister that talks to us and not the PRO. Now, any minister who comes will tell you that, oh, a single spine, as the MPP government was going out, declared single spine. So when we came, we weren't the ones that were going to disappoint the people. We had to honor it. And as we honored it, our wage bill went from 2.5 to 7 billion. And it's taking this chunk of our money. So as far as the average Joe is concerned, it is the single spine that's, the doom and gloom of our nation. The figures behind, which makes it sense that not everything is single spine. Some could have been bonuses. There are ghost names in there, but we don't get the benefit of that explanation. So unfortunately, then the branch is on your door.
Well, and I have been explaining that, look, we have gotten to, in my view, in my candid opinion, we've gotten to the peak. Because you are paying arrears. You are paying the salary itself, you are paying arrears. Arrears are not continuous things. You pay the arrears and you're not going to continue paying arrears. As and when you finish paying the arrears and everything, I am expecting that we should begin to see a certain gradual decline because you've now finished paying the arrears. Apart from that, wage policies, my brother is an economist, wage policy is not a short-term thing. The benefit of every wage policy is long-term. And therefore, in the short term, you may have some of these challenges. As those challenges come, what you do is to deal with those challenges, the things that are creating the problem, and then you now begin to see the long-term benefits of the policy that you put in place. But we tend to always look at the issue in the short term and the difficulties we are having in the short term. And when we do that, we tend to ignore the long-term benefits of policies, and we truncate the policy. And these are the things that we always experience in the country. Like he mentioned, several things can affect the wage bill to go up. It is a fact that if you look critically at the salaries of the public servants before the implementation of the single spine, nobody will tell you that when you implement the single spine, the wage bill will go high. Having gone high, we migrated a bulk of the people in 2011 and 2012. Therefore, once the policy says that you are going to pay them arrears from 2010, it means that those we are paying in 2012, there are payments that you should have done in 2010 that you are doing in 2012. Payment you should have done in 2011 that you are doing you are making it. So all these things come in, and so when you look at the 2012 figure, the 2012 figure will look very high. But at the end of the day, I am still saying that it all boils down to the fact that as a country, we need to just look at we just don't need to look at the short-term difficulties that we are facing and focus on the long-term benefits that pay reforms brings. Pay reforms are not short-term reforms. They are things that have long-term benefit, and that is where we need to focus on.
See, some of the arguments have been that, oh, why would you pay a normal GP salary premium? But I go back to our system. If indeed out of 25 million people, we've only trained 2,000 GPs, then they become premium, doctor. So then you have to pay him premium. Even if he's only, a nail cutter and he's only 2,000 people and we need them, then they become premium. So then they become a burden on the state. If indeed they were like 25,000 GPs, then they are not premium. But now,
let me, before he even comes in, let me address that quickly.
Yes.
You see, they were enjoying a salary together with an additional duty hour allowance under the GUSS. Mm-hmm. You have merged the additional duty allowance into a salary for them. Now you are bringing them from that salary again onto a single spine salary structure, which is based on 40 hours. Meaning that if we say we are going to pay them with that 40 hours, then what it means is that we now have to go back to the extra hour duty period and go and now look at the extra hours again and begin paying those things to them. At the time we were migrating them, this country was not prepared to go back to those extra hour business. It would have been chaotic. And so that was the reason why, as a commission, we felt that there will be the need for us to have this interim arrangement to give them the premium that will take care of it. Between then and the time that we now implement the premium itself, if we are now going to implement 40 hours and we are now going to take care of extra hours, then we don't leave a vacuum. If we had not done that, we would have left a big vacuum in terms of the extra hours. And I can assure the whole nation it would have been chaotic.
Mr. Graham, you need to explain that to me again. Before they moved to single spine, they had their wages plus their extra hours, which is like overtime.
Before they moved to the Ghana Universal Salary Structure.
Okay.
Yes. They had their salary and they had the extra time.
Extra time.
Now,
extra time is anything over 40 hours.
Anything over 40 hours.
Okay.
And it had its own difficulties within the health sector. Mm-hmm. A completely unsustainable something. And so government thought it wise around 2006 to put them onto a new salary structure that incorporated their basic salary into the extra hours.
Extra hours. So then the extra hours now becomes standard or still varies?
It is now in their basic salary.
But then how then do you know he did 10 hours, extra hours, or 6 hours?
That is the point. Everything had been consolidated into their basic salary, so they were enjoying that amount now. And it was for everybody in the health sector. Now, when we were migrating them, the job evaluation was based on 40 hours. And once the job evaluation was based on 40 hours, it means that we needed to have something that would take care of the extra hours that they were doing immediately when we are migrating them. If we say that, okay, we will migrate you based on the 40 hours, now go to your organization and go and deal with the extra hours that you are doing. That's what I'm saying, that we would have created a vacuum that would have been chaotic, that we wouldn't have been able to deal with. And that's the reason why, knowing very well that the policy has a premium in it, we decided, okay, although we are not implementing the premium now, let's introduce the interim market premium using the extra hours as a proxy, so that by the time we now get to the market premium proper, we would have dealt with, what do you call it, whatever vacuum that we would have created in terms of the extra hours.
Yes, maybe let me come in with my own understanding, and I think he has tried to explain it. That was my challenge, because as a student of economics, I know that market premium is determined by the employer. It's the employer who has to tell you that I need your skill, and your skill is in short supply, and therefore I need to up something for you to be able to retain you. That is what it is. And I think we've confused what Fair Wages say as interim market premium with the market premium itself. It is not every worker that is supposed to get a market premium. It could happen that market premium for a particular, the last time I was here and I was talking about the watchman, the nurse, and then the teacher. It could happen that a watchman may get market premium because his skill is so important and his insurance supply, to the extent that his net or his take-home pay will be higher than even the doctor. But it is not static. What I understand is that the workers were receiving some basic already. And one principle that I understand about the single spine, that nobody should become worse off. That was another principle. Yeah. So if you were receiving 100 cedis, I don't want to use a particular worker group, receiving 100 cedis as your basic. But when we did the job evaluation and then put the value on your work, we came to 60 cedis. That means if we pay you 60 cedis, you are going to be worse off. And I think you know that it's going to create problems. And workers will not want their salaries to come down. And therefore, there should be a way to be able to get you to the point that you were, so that there's not going to be. So in their own wisdom, they said interim market premium. Perhaps they could have used another word or something else. So we shouldn't take it that market premium everybody should enjoy. It is something that was carried from the previous arrangement. So that is something that we should understand. Now the market premium, I mean, they have finished, and then there's white paper and so on and so forth. So that is why we have that. So we shouldn't confuse that interim market premium, which I will call it something X. I don't want to bring in the premium to confuse people. Something which was carried from the old system onto the single spine.
Doc, but
to be able
12,000 to one patient, and sometimes 22,000 to one patient up north, he becomes premium.
Yes, but that one is, I mean, we can determine that one as we move on. We can determine that one separately from this one. This market premium, we call interim market premium. It's something that we wanted, when I say we, the state, wanted to avoid any chaos. If you are going to put the person on the spine and based on his job, he's going to receive something lower than what he was receiving, then you have, in quotes, shorting the person. Therefore, you have to find a way so that you create that smooth migration. And that was why that interim market premium came. It could even happen that the market premium proper, they will still get it based on the skill and the skill availability and so on and so forth. So that is the reason why. So when we put everything together and say, this group of people have gotten market premium, I have to also get market premium, because in your case, maybe you were getting 30 cedis, and then when we evaluate your job, you are getting 50. That is the actual 50. We don't need to say that we are adding market premium to it, because another group was getting 100 and job evaluation brought them 80, and they don't want anybody to worse off, and we've given them something else. So that is the understanding that all of us were supposed to get.
You see, apart from the politicians making a mess out of it, trying to win political gains, how about education? I mean, the politicians messed it up. Education and getting people to it, because it's quite a big complex. And admittedly, the day you came and did that, diagram on your screen, then I, sort of understood it a bit more, because it's quite complicated. It's not, straightforward that you can understand it.
Yes. Well, I think it's the education is something that I would say we've not done quite well. And I always use this example that when I teach job evaluation and use single spine as a case study in my graduate class, sometimes I become like fair wages, they become workers, and it becomes give and take. How can you tell me that when I finish my master's, I can't get this and so on? And you have to tell them, I'm not paying you for your master's, I'm paying you the job. So if you have your master's and decide to go and clean the gutter, I can't pay you more than somebody who hasn't been to school and clean the gutter, because the job doesn't require master's and so on. So the education was something that needed. But then we should also not lose sight of the fact that we also raise expectation of workers, because in some quarters you hear that the single spine is going to solve all your income problems and so on and so forth. And that was something that we didn't do well. Therefore, we raised expectations of workers, and to manage it also became a problem. So you've said to the person, well, your problem will be solved. And then when it comes, and then he realizes that, no, my problem has not been solved. And remember, we've come from somewhere. All along, we think that education and qualification is the only determinant of wages from where we come from. Therefore, everybody wants to acquire all the degrees so that he can get that. But then the single spine is based on the job and people still don't understand why I have my PhD, and then you say I should go and teach in secondary school, and then you are saying that you are not paying me, that you are paying the same as somebody who has masters and teaching secondary school, because teaching in secondary school doesn't require PhD. So that thing did not go down well. So the education was quite difficult for people to understand. And the expectation too that we raised was also an issue that we could not manage well. And you should also take note of the fact that we are all economic beings. I want to make sure I maintain my income, and I don't want my income to go down. Of course, the employer doesn't want to bring down his profit and so on. So workers will by all means make sure that they maintain their income at a level that will make them comfortable. And the employer has to also see how he can manage the whole thing to make everybody satisfied.
Let me bring Mr. Graham in here. Mr. Graham, most of the time your position has been very, very hard. And most unions would agitate that even when the National Labour Commission will say, look, come to the table and let's talk, you won't come. Sometimes they go to court and says, look, until you bring the matter to court, go ahead and pay them until you come to court for the court to tell you that you should stop it. Has your position been too hard?
You see, that is the difficulty I sometimes have with some of my colleagues who come on air and say they are labor experts and HR experts and all that. If I'm working as an HR manager for Joy FM, and there are difficulties for me to deal with in terms of salary negotiations in Joy FM, yes, it's important that you engage in the negotiations, and in that case, that is where, when I hear them saying the give and take comes in, because I'm dealing with Joy FM, one organization, and therefore you can have these give and take. When you are working in the position that I find myself, and you are working in the whole of the public service, you are confronted with a situation where it's not an issue of just give and take. Because giving for somebody because you want peace, because the person has decided to declare strike, just goes to create other problems in other organizations. And that is the difficulty that you have. So sometimes you need to make sure that it's not just about giving in to something, but you are giving in to something that is not going to create further problems, because you want to establish certain consistency across the public service. And I must say that because we were in a hurry to migrate everybody onto the single spine, I think we glossed over so many things in terms of some of the rulings that were coming from the National Labour Commission. If today those rulings have come, I'm sure we would have gone to court to challenge them. Because it is beginning to dawn on us that some of the rulings that they gave were not in their mandate to be able to give those rulings. And we'll be challenging those things very soon, because if they give a ruling, and the ruling has an implication of creating further distortions in the policy, what would we have done? So these are the difficulties that we have had all this while
George,
in dealing with these issues.
As far as I agree, I want to disagree with you on the fact that if you take an institution like doctors and teachers, if there's been a ruling that yes, go ahead and pay them, and you disagree, in order to send doctors home and cause people, irreversible damage, wouldn't you quickly pay them and immediately go to court to reverse it, rather than say, no, I'm not going to pay you, and then the whole nation goes into a turmoil? I think that's a bit of a hard stand.
Before he answers, I think we are making a point, pay them. I think that we should also differentiate between the fair wages, managing the system, and somebody paying. I think that is one other challenge that I see about the single spine and its administration, because fair wages, they don't hold the purse.
I know.
It's something that we should understand. So by all means, they have to get a mandate from the government. So when we say pay, I'm not answering for him, but let's understand that when you say pay, it means that perhaps they hold the purse and then they have to pay.
Well,
I think there's that kind of disconnect, and we have to also
somehow he's got the button for the green light.
No, you see, the issue is that, sorry, some of these agitations that took place were agitations that, as a commission, we took responsibility because we are the institution responsible for the policy, but not because the error or the difficulty was coming from our end. Because sometimes, like the recent UTAG strike, UTAG has gone on strike. My mandate was to negotiate with UTAG. I've gotten the mandate, I've negotiated with UTAG.
No, I had Dr. Simmons here who said he came, but nobody from Fair Wages represented. There was a date that you were supposed to meet. They came and no one represented. So they were very, very disheartened that they hadn't been taken serious.
Represented where?
Well, wherever they were supposed to meet to do the negotiation, probably your office, probably a neutral grounds, no one represented. So that's what really...
I'm not really sure exactly what... I didn't listen to it. I'm not sure what... Because this is something that we have concluded in negotiations.
No.
Negotiations had been completed.
According to Dr. Simmons, they were about... you were supposed to meet to get to a conclusions. But nobody represented from Fair Wages.
I'm not too sure whether is our. Okay, now I'm talking.
It was about. It was on the book allowance. The book allowance.
That is different from
the book allowance. The book allowance.
The book and research allowance.
Book and research allowance.
The book and research allowance.
Yes.
Is part of a categories 2 and 3 allowances. The categories 2 and 3 allowances, the decision to start negotiations or not is not within the hands of Fair Wages and Service Commission. The Public Services Joint Standing Negotiation Committee has a team that is working on the categories 2 and 3 allowances. When they complete the categories 2 and 3 allowances, it will be brought forward and then negotiations will start. We have not gotten to the implementation of the categories 2 and 3 allowances. The book and research allowance falls within the categories 2 and 3 allowances. The major challenge they have now is that they feel that the single spine has come to resolve the perceived distortion that existed within the salaries of some institutions. I won't mention some institutions. But because those disparities have been resolved now when it comes to the book and research allowance, they feel disadvantaged. If you look at it on the face of it, yes, it is true. But that is why the next phase of the policy, which is the categories 2 and 3 allowances, will also deal with these issues and correct whatever perceived distortion that has to be corrected.
No, but I think, as far as I was concerned, the figure to be paid is already clear. There's nothing to negotiate. The only problem was that, I think for the past 5 years or something, it hasn't been paid. And all they were waiting for is for the money to be paid. It's not to decide on whether to pay you A or pay you B. The figure is there that you have to pay.
Yeah.
But you are not sort of
but
giving the green light.
That figure that has to be paid is not supposed to be paid by me.
But we've already spent. Spent money on research softwares and so on. So
that money is not supposed to be paid by me.
No, but somehow
the money they don't come back to me.
But do you give the authority?
I don't.
So why are they angry with you?
I don't give the authority.
No, so why are they angry with you?
They're angry with me because they want us to review the figure, which is supposed to be part of categories 2 and 3. But the old figure, the process is this. The universities write to National Council for Tertiary Education. National Council for Tertiary Education compiles the information. They take it to Ministry of Education. Ministry of Education assesses the
Let me get, Dr. Botti, do you want a pay rise in your book allowance, or you just want your backlog paid? Because I'm confused.
Well,
as far as I'm concerned,
it's quite
you just
difficult.
wanted the backlog paid.
It's quite difficult for me to answer because even though I'm a member of UTAG,
you need to switch now.
Yes, I'm a member of UTAG, but I don't. I'm not a member of the executive, so it will be quite difficult for me. But what I understand is the fact that we need some kind of a review of our book and research allowance.
Okay.
And let's face it. I mean, Sir Graham is here. If indeed lecturers are supposed to be given book and research allowance and it's supposed to be the old one, it's quite difficult for us to cope with. Because you may think that we don't buy, I mean, some of us buy books almost every year. If you want to be a very good lecturer and be on top of what you teach, you want to be a very good researcher and be on top. I mean, I normally use statistical software, Stata, and so on. And every year they bring a new one, and one costs $700. And if I want to work as a good researcher and get my students to be able to appreciate that, I need to buy. And it was not 700. I mean, every year it goes up. So perhaps we if it is the old one that we are buying, then it means that we are going to self-feed on our salary to be able to buy the books. And I don't think we can use 1970 books and so on to be able to teach our students.
Mr. Graham, I know you don't have...
That is precisely the case. They were looking for a review. And the review is...
Is it not fair?
So the review is fair. It is very fair that they demand a review. But like I'm saying, you are implementing a policy. The review is supposed to be part of a categories 2 and 3 allowances that you are dealing with. And therefore, you are dealing with it holistically. So if it's the old one, as you are saying, that old one does not need to come back to Fair Wage and Sales Commission before it is paid. We have absolutely nothing to do with the payment of the old one. But when it comes to a review of the new one, then we'd have to do it within the confines of the policy, which is the implementation of the categories 2 and 3 allowances. That's where we need to look at all these things. That is where the issue is.
It's category 2 and 3. Yeah, they don't have anything to do with it.
Yes, no, it's not as if we don't have anything to do with it. We have not got into the categories, the implementation of the categories 2 and 3, because the committee that is working on the categories 2 and 3 at the Public Services Joint Standing Exchange Committee have not even submitted their report yet.
So I think there are issues here that we need to clarify, and I put the cap of economics on my head, and because we don't have, I mean, talking about workers, don't have control over what is the speed at which things must be done and so on and so forth. And he doesn't also hold it because he is also one person. I think we need to strengthen the institutions. Of course, if we say that we are, I mean, the private sector standing negotiating committee are supposed to meet and they are not, let's say, meeting, let's say 1 month, 2 months, 1 year, 3 years, 4 years, I mean, you have that kind of agitation from workers. And I think it is very important that when we put institutions in place, we need to strengthen them. I mean, in terms of logistics, in terms of finances, and so on. I always say that I go to Fairway because I am a labor economist. I'm not a labor expert, I should put it. I'm just a labor economist. And I see that you cannot manage a whole public sector wage, and you don't have what it takes to be able to do that. And I think it's very important that if we need to get our institutions work efficiently, we have to strengthen them to be able to do that. Because from where I sit as a worker, if you tell me that they are supposed to meet to be able to do this, and I wait, and I have to also get all these tools to be able to work, but they haven't met, and so on. That's where the agitation comes in. So it may not be his fault, but it is the way the institutions are working that also creates a problem.
I'm going to take a quick break, and then when I come back, I know everything when you start has got its teething problems, but with the amount of teething problems that the single spine has got, are we going to be able to iron it out, and how? Stay tuned. Hello, welcome back. We are talking about the almighty single spine salary structure. and we have heard how much is consuming national revenue and everything. Today we're having a big education, and with me in the studio is Dr. Barb Watting, who's a labor economist, and then I have George Smith Graham, who's the Chief Executive of Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. And if you haven't heard his name, then you haven't tuned on to the radio yet. I am saying that there's everything, when you start a big project like this, you have teething problems. But with all these teething problems going on, are we ever going to be able to iron it? And I'll start with you, George. I mean, can we iron out these creases so that, in the next 2-3 years, it's never a problem? Everybody understands that I earn this money and I get that bonus and that's it.
Well, I think we'll get there. It requires some little patience. If you look at this phase of implementation, the major task of this phase is the grading structure and migrating people onto the grading structure. And I'm not sure anybody is going on strike on the grading structure. By and large, we've resolved the issue of the grading structure. What is happening now is that people are now looking at other phases, other benefits that they are supposed to get as part of the other phase of implementation of the single spine. And sometimes by the time they start agitating, we have not gotten there yet with regards to its implementation. And so it becomes a problem. And these are the challenges that we are facing. Having resolved the issue of the grading structure by and large, once we move on to the categories 2 and 3 allowances, and we get the categories 2 and 3 allowances standardized and harmonized, the market premium guidelines are out. We're able to determine the market premium and everything. We will all notice that everything will be stabilized. Now, the difficulty we had was that if you take a critical look at the government white paper, the government white paper, for instance, is talking about implementing the single spine in 5 phases of 5 years. So it's like it tied each phase to a year. One phase is a migration onto the single spine salary structure. That phase alone has taken us 3 years. We've not finished. So once the workers also know that everything is supposed to be done within 5 years, once he gets one and is enjoying that one, he's sometimes a bit impatient to wait for you to get to the other stage. And so they start agitating for the next phase. I am thinking that it is one of the reasons why we are having all these issues of the wage bill and wage bill and wage bill. I believe that if we go systematically with regards to its implementation, and as I said earlier on, pay policy is a long term. And I believe that those experts within the labor unions will tell you that they never expected that the policy will be implemented in the 5 years that, as was stated in the white paper, because you can't use 5 years to do such a Coolean tax. It takes more than that. And so we all need to agree on the way forward and know that, look, let's take one thing after the other, complete one thing, and then we move on to another, complete it, and we move on to other. If we do it that way, I believe the agitations will be reduced.
Agitations are reduced, everything is ironed out. Bank of Ghana is saying that the national debt now is about 39.1 billion, which is about 43% of our GDP, is national debt. So everything is ironed out. Where do we get the money to fund it? Economist.
Well, I think I always analyze the economy and liken it to your home. So you have to sit down and look at your priorities and which one best fit. I mean, the government has a lot of commitments and the government needs to prioritize. I mean, if you think that it is better for you to pay for A and get the returns that you want, that is where you have to go for. And that is something that the government has to do in terms of its priorities. I tried not to mention items because I will go into other areas, but I think in economics, we have scale of preference and you know your priorities. Of course, you cannot sit down and say that at home, I'm not going to eat. That is the first thing that you need to look at. So the government should analyze all this and see how best we get. Indeed, we have the debt up to 39 point whatever billion, and you have to also look at how it came about and if we have invested it efficiently to be able to get the returns to pay back. I think it's something that we need to do. I always say that policies must always be backed by research. We don't just sit now and just borrow, or we don't just sit down and come up with a policy. If you take single spine, I know the whole thing started around 2005, 2006. A lot of work went into it, research and so on. You still have a problem. So that means that if you are coming up with any policy, you are coming up with any activity, and you don't look at best practices elsewhere, you get to a point where you know that, well, if I had known, I wouldn't have gone there. So my priority is that we can't go back. What we need to do is to prioritize our expenditure and know which one will best give us returns to be able to pay whatever you have to pay.
George, you see, like your brother here said, that he feels sorry for you. Now, this is how I feel sorry for you. You see, we ran a system where, number one, the system was so premature, but because of political gains, politicians were jumping up and down, up and down, up and down, and they plank you there. You're doing what you can do there. Again, while you are trying to iron out all these problems, we are running up national debt. We are doing GIDA, which a report is coming. You can see how much money is going through GIDA, and there's not that much returns. You know, how much whatever money they put in, we don't see that money, that much returns coming out. Where is the money going to come today? And I don't see you jumping up and down saying, now listen, you politicians, get your act right, because it's going to come back and bite me. You know, it's a system that is in the country that maybe because of how your position is, it makes your hands tied that you can't tell them off that, listen, you're making my work difficult, and that, you know, keep your pairs in check.
No, I think the issue is that if I have such issues, I discuss with them when we meet. When we meet and I have any issues, I have any challenges, yes, I'm confident enough and bold enough to let them know what they are doing wrong and what they are not doing right. So all those things we do, but you will not get me coming on air to make those statements. That is the reason why nobody has heard us on air even complaining about the commission and whatever difficulties we have and all that. I don't believe in that. I believe in, yes, you have the constraints. Do the best that you can within the constraints that you have, and then at the end of the day, you move on. That is how
do you have a budget for education? It's a direct question. Has the state given you a budget that, there you go, that's 5 million Ghana cedis. Go to every radio station, go to every TV station, put adverts in newspapers so that people understand what you're doing?
I saw the doctor with the, he can look at the budget of the Fair Wage and Sales Commission, the whole year budget. The day I saw the budget, I almost wept. And but aside that,
was there part for education? I guess the answer is no. I'm going to answer for you, and then I'm going to get in trouble. I guess the answer is no.
Well, maybe I can
help us
with education. I think they are doing something on GTV, and I have appeared on it, I think 3 or 4 times.
On credit,
but they did not do anything. My fuel was not even paid, so you can imagine how.
Well, you see, so viewers, you see, this is the thing. Once again, you know that song that says, "And who caused the mess?" You know, the politicians caused the mess, and then they send everybody else there. Because I'm just imagining, if there's not a budget, you know, money set aside to say, look, this is it. Every radio station, every newspaper should be, you know, telling a story on how we have to understand it. Well, what is the way forward?
It's been frankly a very tough assignment, and tough in the sense that if you are undertaking the assignment and you have all the resources, you may not even have all the resources, but at least you have adequate resources. One of the most important things that we need to do, that we did previously in terms of public education, was continuous engagement of stakeholders, holding stakeholder meetings and having these discussions. And you ask me, how many stakeholder meetings have we had since 2011? None. Because if we want to hold a stakeholder meeting, we have to go and hire a venue. We have to do this, we have to do this. And we are working within a very restricted budget that does not give us flexibility to do in anything. You sit in an organization as a chief executive, and sometimes you even need to use your own resources to fund activities of the organization. They are very difficult times. But you see, like I keep saying, it's a challenge to all of us. How we'll be able to work even within the limited resources that we have. And that's what we've been doing so far. And that's why, for me, I think that when I look back, and I look at the team that I have, and I look at the work that we have done so far, I am proud of the team, and I think that the team has done a good job. We have had all these difficulties, but it has been a very difficult assignment for us if we look at the constraints that we will have to face.
George, could you, without complaining, without blaming anybody, in a nicer way, have educated the nation that, listen, this is the position that I have, this is the task ahead, work with me? I haven't heard you like that.
Oh, we've done that several times.
No, but I haven't heard it.
Oh, several times.
Because anytime your name is mentioned, it is the iron man who is not going to budge by hook or crook. And that is the position which is more out there. But that, you know, I have lemonade money and I need to serve you champagne story hasn't come up.
No, I think that story has been out there. The difficulty we always have is that, you know, those who go on these strikes are those who, I can say, have the muzzle. And so when they go on the strike and they are telling the stories and everything, everybody listen to it. It is not as if, how can I be, I'm not that such a hard person. We are just implementing a policy, and it's a principle. And if the principle is right, why not? We go ahead with it. But if the principle is not right, and you want us to bend something with wider implications for the nation and for everybody. Today we didn't bend in most of the things that we are talking about. We are complaining about the wage bill. I can't imagine if all the pressure that came to us, we needed to bend, and we bent. Then I'm sure by now the country, I'm not sure what would have happened to the country.
Rounding up for us, they have lemonade money, and we need to be served, you know, expensive champagne. How do we work with fair wages? How, especially the trade unions, how do we work with them? Just in 1 minute, round it up for me.
What I think my brother has been lambasted a number of times, and I think in industrial relations, including
me.
Yes, industrial relations, there are issues that sometimes we all have to sit down and resolve. For instance, I will beg of him that if Labour brings a complaint, writes a letter, and so on, I mean, sometimes just giving a response. For instance, I think we've explained certain things about lecturers' research and book allowance and so on, and you are talking about the fact that the committee that is supposed to negotiate on that hasn't finished. I don't. It will take anything out of you to be able to put pen on paper and respond to them that yes, I have heard you, but I don't have the mandate, and this and that, so that they also know that they receive something. So the complaint is always that, well, when we write to fair wages, we don't hear anything, and so on and so forth. That is where the agitation normally comes out. And the other one is also to the government. I think we all need to be proactive. It's quite disheartening when workers begin to back, and then the government comes out and say, oh, everything is ready. 25 million cities have been, the check is ready, and so on. The moment you do that, then all workers will know that unless you back the government, will not give in to your demand. And I think that is something that we need to watch out.
Folks, you've been watching PM Express. We're looking at the single spine salary structure. Yes, if we make our priorities right, then it will sustain. But if we don't, then we cannot sustain it. But indeed, it's a good thing which we should all sacrifice to make sure it works for you and I. Sir Graham, George is going to change his position. He's going to be a bit softer. But you should understand that he's penniless, but he needs to do a Herculean task. Thank you very much, Doctor. George, thank you very much. Tomorrow we'll be back here to do it all over again.